So I believe I finally have the technical know-how to explain why this particular warp, where you go underwater and you teleport to Akinars through AC jump. In order to assist me with this, I have DNSPy. DNSPy is a disassembler that can run through really any code, but we can use Unity code in particular to understand. So we have this enable point and click using a bool enable. So if we're enabling it, we're enabling it. If we're disabling, we're disabling it. Most important part is this sort of code here. This stuff is weird and it has to do with like loading and a bunch of other gubbins. But this is the most important part. This is how it selects the right node to pick. So let's walk into it. This is a select node right here. This is 163 lines long, but it happens to be pretty simple. It's just a little bit wordy. So let's walk through it together. First, it runs through all of the rooms that it can find, and if the room is loaded, it adds it to the list. So this probably culls out like Cirrus's room, Akinar's room, and like the sacrifice room in Channelwood, but the rest of everything else should be in the Channelwood room. So anything that's in the Channelwood room, we have that as a room, probably. Second, it finds all of the navigation nodes, and if it's in that room and it's not an orphan, this is probably irrelevant, whatever, it adds it to a list called list, right? Very creative. So now we have this big list of nodes that are in the room. So now what it does is it sorts them by the distance of the player, right? So we want the ones that are closest first, and then all the way out to the ones that are the furthest away. This is so that we can find the closest position that hits our conditions, right? So the first thing that it does, and this is far and away the most important to the trick that we're analyzing today, is that it does a raycast. So a raycast is basically you draw a line from, in this particular instance, from the player's current head to the head of the position that it would be expecting to go to, right? And what it does is it walks through everything that line hits, and it says, oh, is that a trigger? That's a problem. Otherwise, if none of those are triggers, which I'm assuming means, you know, none of those are things that trigger the collider, or there's nothing in the way, essentially. Nothing in the way that you can't normally walk through. This is to prevent us from like teleporting through doors that we shouldn't be able to, and so on and so forth, right? So that makes sense. So that's the first condition. Can you draw a line from our head to the head of the position that we're expecting and make it, you know, without anything in the way? So the second thing that it does, I don't really understand what this is doing, but I think it walks through all of the transitions and it says, is there one that's valid? So is there a way to get there? All right. That seems simple enough. Most nodes seem to have that, and I think this covers it, but they probably encountered some weird edge case. So they're basically saying, are all of these valid? Like I even checked this. This is a virtual that says, you know, return true, but I haven't found any conditionals that override it, so I'm guessing it just always returns true. I don't know what this is for, but this is irrelevant. This is the more important thing, although I still don't understand why they have to do it. So then it runs through all of the nodes again, and it says, all right, let's look at the hotspots of these nodes. Is there at least one hotspot, you know, a place that you click on the screen that takes us to the node that we're analyzing? If that's the case, then we're good, right? So I don't really understand why it has to do this, and honestly, I'm not sure I fully understand what conditionals do, so maybe my understanding is sort of muddied. But really the most important part is this raycast part, so it's not super important. One of the cool things is that at the bottom here, if it finds a node that's valid, then it analyzes the name of the node, and every node ends with some sort of direction, right? Or at least it should. It says token is direction. So that means, you know, if I'm going to go into game real quick, you know, we're in front of Akinars, so we could say, you know, front of Akinars is north, and front of Akinars is south. So what it wants to make sure of is if I'm standing right here, even though I might be technically closer to the node that's facing south, it picks the one that's facing north. So that's interesting. And then that's basically the end of the function. I don't think any of this really matters. Navigation node 6 in a list something about normalization. I don't think this is super important. I think the raycast bit is important. So, back to the game. Let's use our knowledge to apply to why we might think this works. So, let me point this out. This is Akinar's room, way over here. Basically, anything that's on the second floor is on this side of this tree. At the very least, probably even further. Akinar's house or room or whatever is way out over here. So when I walk out here, and actually this is a cool demonstration, is if I'm down here, right? I can see Akinar's house, but I can't see like that position. So when I try to transition, I can't. And actually it says, you know, you're blocked from being able to do this. If I walk slightly over so that I can see the bridge, bingo. And actually it picks a more appropriate direction because I'm facing the other direction. So that's it then, is that the only node that it can find is the one that's not blocked off by this massive rock island here. As a further demonstration, if I walk further out, there's more bridge. Some of these positions are probably closer, so now I'm over here. So it just happened to find that this position was closer and also valid. So hopefully that's a really cool understanding of why this works, is that basically it draws a line, and in that behind the rock area, the only line that it can find is the one right in front of Akinar's house.